This is Happiness Solved with America's happiness coach, Sandee Sgarlata.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am so happy you're here. So before I introduce today's guest, I want to share with you my 4 simple tips on self-love. You see, so many people are looking for love, and what they do not realize is that they need to learn to love themselves first in order to have a healthy, loving relationship with someone else or their soulmate. In a Psychology Today article by April Eldemeyer stated that more self-love will attract healthier relationships. So tip number 1 is forgive yourself and others. When you are holding on to bitterness for someone else or for yourself, forgiveness is essential. Remember, forgiveness is letting go of the bitterness so you are free to love instead. Tip number 2, stop comparing yourself. So often we compare ourselves to others, wishing we had someone else's looks, their money, their relationship, the car, the house. But when you compare yourself to someone else, all you're doing is reinforcing that you're not good enough, and you are good enough. Tip number 3, stop criticizing yourself. That critical voice in your head is sabotaging any chance to love yourself and to love someone else. Instead, talk to yourself like you are talking to a child that is upset, being gentle and compassionate. And lastly, tip number 4, accept yourself. You need to work on accepting yourself exactly the way you are. Understand and know that you are perfect. So if you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit my website at www.sandeesgarlata.com. So thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Today's guest is with Brent Cassidy. Brent was an innovative CEO of Forever Enterprises, which he grew from a regional company to a national company operating in over 22 states. He was recognized by the national media, Time Magazine, Fortune, Wall Street Journal, just to name a few. HBO even did a documentary that spawned the TV series 6 Feet Under. Just when he thought he had it all, he lost it all and found himself standing at the Gates of Leavenworth Prison to serve a 5-year sentence. He coined the phrase nightmare success because everything you want in life is on the other side of fear. I hope you enjoy this episode. It's really amazing. Hi, Brent. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sandee. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've been really looking forward to this interview with you. Yeah.
So have I.
Great. And I'm glad we got through our little technical issues, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it's all good at the end of the day. So I know your story, and it's amazing. It's incredible. But I want you to share with the audience what you went through, how you ended up behind bars, and give us that short version of that.
The short version is, Sandee, is I've had an interesting life, and I've had it all and lost it all. We were in a family business. It grew into a national company, and things got really ugly around 2006 or 2007. And, I had one of these decisions to make as somebody that was in a family business. My dad had been somebody who had, by the way, my dad was somebody I idolized. So Dad ran the whole financial side of our business. We had a marketing company, we had an insurance company, and we owned cemeteries. And the insurance business was something I just really, Sandee, never got involved with because it never interested me, and it was my own laziness not to get involved with it. I liked marketing and sales, and when things started to get ugly became on the insurance side of our business with our reinsurer, just a real quick thing. A reinsurance person is somebody, when you write business as an insurance company, a bigger company takes your business and pretty much pays you a little less money, and then they take on all the risk. So we got into a ugly arbitration that my dad got into with the reinsurer, and it started costing us a lot of money, millions of dollars within the arbitration, and that started to raise red flags with the 22 states we were in. And when all of that started happening, I got called in by my dad and our attorney and said, we've really got some things going on, and we need a voice to go out and talk to these regulators. So they say, Brent, we really think you'd be good to go out and talk to these people and tell them our business plan, what we're doing, and to try to calm things down. Sandee, that was, to me, I even look back at that today. Would I still make the same decision that I made then? Probably, even though everything that I've gone through. I had to think about, we had 400 plus people working for us, and they were loyal. They've been with us a long time. And so I guess I had a big enough ego at the time to think I could go in and save the day if they just tell me what I need to know, because I really didn't know much about the insurance side. But they set me down and basically gave me a tutorial on what we did as an insurance company when those contracts from sales went to insurance. So I began to become very involved with going and speaking to the regulators, which, looking back on it, that made me the face of the company at a time when the house was burning.
Well, and of course you would do that. It's a family business.
It was a family business, so
Yeah.
it felt right.
Of course.
But things happen so fast in those type of things. Probably 2 or 3 times I thought that we had solved the problem, we had saved the day. And things with a big company, when you've got regulators and things they start asking for this and that, and it comes from another state, and then it comes from another state, and you're now into 22 states, and everybody's asking for different things. It's like claustrophobic, like you feel like you can't breathe. Eventually, things did not go, and I did not and could not save the day, and our company went into receivership, and that turned into the U.S. attorney looking at our business, and eventually it became criminal. And all of those things, as they happened, it was a very public, very, very public with what was going on in our town, and it was something that took on even national ramifications. But I was a dad with 3 daughters, a wife. I simply told them, let's don't look at the news, because whatever's going on with the news is there's nothing we can do about that. So we really, as a family, we flexed our muscles and we told ourselves we're going to be survivors through this. We're not victims. We're going to be survivors. We're going to stay strong. We're going to take the friends that are being supportive, and we're going to do what we need to do. So that's the short story of where things came to. The one thing that happened to me, Sandee, is that there's so many laws on the books that my dad had put the business in Rhonda, Brent, and Tyler, which was a trust. And so, backing up just a little bit, my dad had a situation back when he was in his early 30s and got in trouble with the bank, and he had actually served 6 months. So we were a family that had gone through this before. There was also a reason why Dad couldn't talk or speak to regulators, because he was perceived to be someone that was an easy prey to a regulator, being an ex-felon. So that's how I got into that step with the speaking to regulators.
So what ended up happening? The U.S. Attorney's Office started doing an investigation.
Right. eventually they said that our business plan was not sustainable. The business itself, even though we had been in business for 25 years and paid all the death claims and paid all the commissions, there was a debate about the value of the insurance policy, whether it would be valued at the face amount or the cash amount, way above my pay grade. To this day, I don't know all that I probably should have known, and I still can't really speak to it all as well as I probably should. I just know that when the attorneys and the regulators got involved with it, they didn't think that what was going on was sustainable going forward. And eventually, one of the charges that I came to have to deal with is that my dad was an ex-felon working in the business of insurance. I had no idea that in 1994 Congress had passed a law that said that an ex-felon couldn't work in the business of insurance. Because I was one of the owners of the business, that carried a 5-year sentence, and there really wasn't any way for me to get around that one. I should have known. I didn't know. And if I would have gone to trial, that would have been something that the jury would have been instructed to understand, that was a law that was put on the books in 94, and me being the president or the CEO should have known that law. Mm. So it was just, it was an unfortunate thing. Unfortunate for a lot of reasons, Sandee. I was proud of what we had done as growing the company. I was really proud of our training and our systems and our marketing, and there was a lot of good people that worked for us, and we will forever have a black eye in the industry and what we did because of what happened. And a lot of people who were loyal to our business and had good livings, made a good living, lost their jobs. And, Sandee, I think that's something when you're in the position I was, being an executive in the company and an owner, there's no way to shake that off. It's a feeling that you don't ever get over. It's one of those things.
So how long did you serve?
So I ended up, my plea bargain was probation to 5 years. And when we got into that, we got into the courtroom. It's like that scene in Braveheart where they all come, where William Wallace is there and they're going to torture him, and all the people from the town are gathered around. That's what you feel like.
Right.
And there were 6 of us that were getting sentenced that day, and my dad was the first one, and his was probation to 10 years, and she gave him 10 years. And she began to max everybody out.
Oh my gosh.
And so when I got up, I realized my opportunity for a probation to 2 years or 3 years was fastly slipping through my hands. And when I got up there, she said 60 months. And, it almost took the air out of me, because it was such a big weight of a word of 5 years or 60 months. And I knew that was going to be something I was going to be, away from my family, away from people that I knew, and moving into an unfamiliar world that I would have to adapt to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like. So did you serve the full 5 years?
Well, the way it worked is that the 60-month sentence, you serve 84% of that time. So if you serve good time, you don't get a shot in prison, which there's levels of shots that you can get for disciplinary reasons. They can start taking away your good time. So I thought that would be the most stupid thing to do, is to get in trouble in prison. So I did get the 84%. I also was lucky enough, through my pre-sentencing report, the guy that was giving me, or was writing up my report, he asked me if I was under a lot of stress, and I said, absolutely. I don't know if I've ever been.
How could you not be?
He said, Brent, are you drinking? I said, yes, I am. And he said, are you drinking to relieve your stress? I said, I believe I am. And he said, well, I think what I'm going to do is, he says, there's a program. He said, I'm going to put in your pre-sentence report that we're going to recommend this program. And if you get into the program, once you get to Leavenworth, then you can get a year off your sentence.
Mm.
So for me, Sandee, that was like, it had been such a dark process to go through. That was a light, at the end of the tunnel. I knew when I got to Leavenworth that I had to go and try to get an appointment with the doctor who ran the program, and then he would decide if I could qualify. And so once I got there, that was one of my goals, and I finally got in to see him, and about, I guess it was 7 or 8 months later, I did get approved to go into the program, which gave me a year off. So I actually served 3 years. So I served 3 years of a 5-year sentence.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about, you said it took your breath away.
Yeah.
When did you have to report to jail? Was it right away?
Well, it wasn't, Sandee, and that's the weird, strange process of, some people are taken right then.
Right.
When they're sentenced, and they put you in the county jail until it's decided on where you're going to be. I was not that unfortunate. I was allowed to stay, and then so November 14th was when I was sentenced, and I got the letter in the mail, I think in December, telling me where I was going, and then January 14th, 2014, I went to Leavenworth.
Okay. And that's a federal prison.
Federal prison. And there, in the federal prison, it's interesting because I didn't really know this. There's only about 200 to 250,000 federal prisoners. There's I think about 2 million prisoners incarcerated, but the federal system doesn't carry as many prisoners as you would think they would.
All right. So what were those 2 months like? I mean, okay, you got to spend Christmas with your family. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
But what was that like leading up to those final days when you knew you were headed, and you didn't know if it was going to be 3 years, 4 years, right?
Yeah, no, it's your mind goes through a lot of different stages, I think. By that stage, you just want to grab onto everything that's important to you. And, time feels like it's just flashing so fast, with your daughters. And, I got to go out and spend time with my middle daughter she was playing Division I tennis at Arizona. So I got to go out there and see her play, and it was just like every moment that you had, you were just grasping onto it, because you knew your freedom was only just steps away from losing it. So it was just it's a really interesting time. But Sandee, I'll tell you one of the things that happened to me. So this would have been November, December. I had in July, when I decided to plea, it was the darkest time I've ever had in my life, and my kids and wife were out of town. I was going to go the next day to go see them, and we had been on a family call that the decision had been made that we were going to plea. My dad, myself, and my world just got so spun out of control that it became irrational. I started thinking, my kids would be better off without me. They need a clean start. Julie, she's been such a warrior through this. She needs a clean start. I don't know. I don't even know if I could live the rest of my life as an ex-felon. Do I want to be a stain on them for the rest of my life? And so I've never been like that, because I'm a half full guy. The cup's half full, not half empty. And I've always been optimistic. But I had fallen into this dark hole that, I guess, feeling sorry for myself that I was bringing everybody down. And I drank too much that night, and I got out a piece of paper, and I wrote out all the things to my daughters, that this is the things you need to know, and started thanking the friends that had been behind me, and telling Julie that she needed a clean start. And when I think back on it, Sandee, I can't believe that all happened. But I went down into the car and I turned the car on. I didn't know if I was going to go run into a tree or if I was just going to sit in the garage and just let it take me in. And it was like a lightning bolt hit me that I thought, oh man, Brent, what in the world are you doing? This is probably the worst thing you could ever do. I mean, you could not be seen any weaker than checking out on your family and the people who have supported you. And I wouldn't want to be remembered this way. And it was like at that moment, Sandee, that exact moment, I can remember it so vividly. Thank God I didn't pass out in that car.
Yeah.
And I knew at that moment, I said, okay, snap out of this, Brent. From this point on, whatever happens, you're going to survive this. You're going to adapt to this. You're going to have to walk into it. And you're going to have to make sure that you're not bringing anybody along to feel sad or bad about you. You're going to take it. And you're going to just keep stepping. And hopefully you can use this experience to benefit something. And from that moment on, it was like I found myself. It was like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to do it. And so those months that we're talking about between November and January, I was so sad and scared, knowing that I was going into something I didn't have any idea what I was going to be stepping into. It was very unfamiliar, but I made sure that whatever I was doing, the family knew I was going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. This is something I've got to do. I'll do it. We'll take care of it. And that was my mindset. But those feelings down deep, gosh, Sandee, I would never wish that on anybody, to have to spend those weeks waiting to go into a prison. It's not a good place to be.
Yeah,
ever.
well, I love what you said, and I didn't write it down exactly, but it was something to the effect of, during that time, you said that everything was so precious. Mm-hmm. And what I thought of was, we all need to live like that every single day.
Such a good point.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing that happens is that rarely do you have a situation to become that centered, that focused on moments. But I guess it would be like somebody who was finding out that they had some kind of death sentence or something, and you start looking around you and feeling and responding to things maybe differently than you have in the past. But to me, I was so desperate not to lose any moments that I was just so intent on being present with anything that was going on. And I do think, Sandee, there's something to that. We shouldn't take those moments for granted, because you don't know how long you have.
Right. That's exactly right. We are going to take a quick break from today's interview because I am so excited to tell you about a new program that I've just rolled out. It includes 2 group coaching calls each month to help you create the lasting happiness you so desire. It's only a $50 a month investment in yourself, and you are worth it. So visit www.sandeesgarlata.com/courses to sign up. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's interview. So, what was your first 30 days like behind bars?
Well, it was such an experience from the standpoint that there is nothing like standing at the gates of a federal prison. Regardless if you're going to a minimum camp or you're going to the maximum penitentiary, we all start at the same place, and they process you in the same basement of the penitentiary. And it's so scary. I remember standing out there. It was January in Kansas. The wind was gusting. It was a cloudy day, and my mom and my brother and my wife were in the car, and so I finally got out because I knew I had to walk up there at 1:00, and and you stand at that gate. And I took off my coat because I realized I want that coat when I get out. That's a coat I like. But I I went and got a Big Mac before we drove up there because I didn't know when I was going to eat again. So I thought at least I can have a Big Mac. I can have that as the last piece of freedom. But there's nothing like stepping into those gates because you got these two gates. You've got the barbed wire, the rolled barbed wire that's on the ground, on the fence. And every step you take, you can feel the freedom shedding off. It almost feels like it's shedding off your skin. And you're one thing that you realize once you step into that environment is you don't know anything, which they prefer. And you won't know anything. They're only going to tell you what the next move is. And so your only thought is what's going to happen next. But what I can tell you is I was there in that processing for 4 or 5 hours, and one of the scary thoughts is, do they know where they're putting me? You know, they have any idea that I'm supposed to be somewhere else, or this is where I'm going to stay? You know, are they keeping me in the basement of this penitentiary down here? And you've got all these terrible thoughts going through your mind. But within the first hour, once I was brought into the where I would be spending the next 3 years of my life, it is a lot like you see in the movies. They do gather around, the inmates do, because it's a new person coming in. I was with another person that day who was coming in also. And, you know, they gather around, they look at you, they kind of size you up, and you're scared because you don't know what all that means. They immediately take you down into a basement that's got, just as you would think, it's a dark basement. It's got the water pipes and stuff, and that's where you get your clothes and your bedding. But when they took me up to my where I would be staying, so you had 4 blocks. You had A, B, and C and D block, and so I was in A2. Quite a crazy place. I mean, you had 50 bunk beds, and everybody had a plastic chair and a locker, and that was your world. And so they led me over to this bunk bed, and this Hispanic guy came up to me. Kind of looked like he was from like a military boxer. And he said, "You must be my new bunkie." He said, "You don't look like you've ever been here before." So he said, "Let me help you out." So he immediately started helping me because you had to make your bed military style. He went to the bathroom to get some cleaning supply stuff to help me clean out my locker. He said, "I'm going to take you over here. You're going to meet Clark, and he's one of you." And he walked me across the dormitory, and Clark was sitting there. And unbeknownst to me, Sandee, I find out that Clark, 8 years my senior, went to the same high school as me and played basketball as I did, and I could not believe that this was within the first hour of this
Oh my
whole
gosh.
thing. But both of these guys immediately were incredibly helpful. And from that point on, one of the things that, you know, it takes you a little while to get set up in prison because you have to learn the inmate rules. You know, they give you the prison rules, but
Right.
the inmate rules are really what makes you adapt to your life
and possibly be safe.
and be safe.
Right.
And, you know, I found out Roma was he was a guy, you know, that was he was part of the Texas Homeboys, and there was Texas Homeboys and the Pisces that were Hispanic gangs, and he spoke for me. He said, "I don't want anybody messing with Cassidy." And for me, that was a good guy to have run into to be my bunkmate.
No kidding.
At the very beginning. But yeah, it takes a little bit of that night. I was able to make a phone call to my wife. I went downstairs. I went to the counselor's office. I said I read that I could make a phone call just so that they know I'm okay. And I remember the counselor said, "Yeah, Ray, you can do that." I said, "Well, I'm Brent Cassidy." And he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "You just kind of look like Ray Romano." He said, "I might just go with that." So in the strangeness of the day, that was kind of funny to me that all had happened. But, you know, he picked up the phone, he dialed my number, and, you know, there was my life on the other line. You know, my wife and kids, and I told him I was okay and told him I'd already had a couple of people to help me out and I was going to be okay. And so that was important for me. And then that night, I'm basically speaking about my first night there because it's still so vivid to me. I was kind of close to the bathroom there, and so we had a light that kind of shone back onto our bunk bed. And I remember popping out of my bunk bed because I was looking at that huge penitentiary up on the hill, all lit up. And I thought, I better just do what I've always done. I've got to figure out what do I want to do in here to not go crazy. And so I wrote out about 5 or 6 goals of things that I needed to do to get adjusted and live my life in prison. And I think that helped me adjust and adapt. And I think, actually, Sandee, one of the things that I like to think of them as 5 rules that I have, but they were really 5 rules that I had before I ever went to prison, but they became so helpful to me when I was in prison. The first one was to humble yourself and ask for advice. If you see somebody that's making it work, go talk to them. Ask them how they're making it work because you need to make it work, especially in prison, but not so much, maybe it's a new job or you're getting into a new something. It's always good to just humble yourself, look around you, and see who's getting it right. The other thing was writing the goals down, having a plan. I always say it's trying to find your Zihuatanejo, that thing that in the movie with Andy Dufresne, he knocked through that wall for 19 and a half years to set himself free.
You're talking about my favorite movie, Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, Shawshank. And he just, it motivated him every day. He let a little bit of that wall out into the yard, and that was his reward for the day. So the other thing was, one day at a time. You can't look 3 years or 5 years in the future. One day at a time. Unfair things happen, but move on anyway and try to make a difference, regardless.
Right.
The fourth thing is learn from your mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They do not define you, but they do make you wiser. So use that. Use that. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Just don't make it twice. The last one was maybe the most important to me was don't give in, don't give up. Keep being yourself regardless of the circumstances. Otherwise, you'll lose what makes you you. And to me, that was really important in prison, and I think it's just important in daily life. Don't ever lose yourself in a situation you find you're in. Keep being yourself and find things that make you or fill you up so you don't lose yourself. You don't ever want to become institutionalized. A lot of people become institutionalized in prison to where they get so used to their routine, and even though it's a horrible place and the routine is really bad, that becomes more familiar to them than being free, and that scares them to take the next step and do the thing that might be the change thing that makes you feel better. So you can't get institutionalized. Keep being yourself. Otherwise, you will lose yourself, and that's a bad, slippery slope.
And that's almost like being imprisoned anyway.
It is.
Yeah.
I actually think, Sandee, everybody has, through their life experiences, have built up prisons in their mind. And it's something where I think that people, whether it's, a bad job or a bad marriage or somebody's death or a health, whatever that is, people can get into ruts where they're afraid to take the next step. And I always say, if you just take that step, if you can just walk into your fear, everything you ever want's on the other side of fear. So you'll feel better if you step into it. It'll make you like, oh, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That's one of the things I learned about prison. I think nothing is ever as bad as your mind makes it out to be. Mm-hmm. Prison wasn't as bad as I had my mind made up it was going to be.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, those 5 goals that you set, it got you through prison, but those are goals that everybody can use to get through their life.
I think they can, because
Yeah.
those are tools that if you find yourself, all of us do, you find yourself kind of veering into the ditch, and you look at it and say, why am I veering into the ditch? What's putting me here?
All right, so you get released. What happens next?
Well,
What was that like? I want to hear about the reunion. Let's talk happy stuff.
I got to tell you, Sandy, you walk into prison by yourself, you walk out of prison by yourself. But the one thing that I learned is there was such a great day to walk out of prison. I mean, you get your clothes. My wife sent me my clothes, and I open up that box finally the day I'm getting released, and it's got my clothes in it. And I actually, you put your clothes on, and you're the only person that has street clothes on in this prison environment, and that's so strange. But I remember my obviously my three daughters, my wife had come, and we had a visit the day before, and we just couldn't believe that we were just hours away from all of us being able to just drive away together. And I remember them calling my name, and I came out of my two-man cell dressed in my clothes, and everybody's gathered around again, but this time everybody's cheering you on.
Aww.
So it's a really great feeling, both leaving, there's people though that you're close to in prison that you hate leaving them there because you know that they're staying there. So there's that feeling of, I hate to see Rick's going to be here for 2 more years, but the feeling of walking out and knowing you're walking out to your family, and I walked out and we hugged and we got in the car. It makes me emotional talking about it.
Of course. I'm getting emotional just hearing it because I can't even imagine.
But it was just an incredible feeling that I'll never have that type of feeling again for all of us. And we all felt like, when I got in the car, it was like, it's just a sense of accomplishment. And it's so strange to say that our family felt a sense of accomplishment that we'd gone through prison, but we really did feel that way. And I remember Carly, my middle daughter, posted on her, I think it was her Instagram, she said, "You never know how strong you are until strong is all you have."
Yeah.
But it was just a great feeling. But the immediate feeling was, I remember going to Quick Trip. It was a gas station kind of mini mart thing. And I was just walking around kind of like in awe of like all these selections, you have. And so I walked up there and I think my youngest daughter said, "Dad, you got to pay." And I hadn't paid anything for 3 years. So it was just a strange phenomenon. But they made it to where you had like a quick turnaround of, you had to be at this halfway house. And I had, I think, 4 hours or 5 hours to get there. And that was like going to another prison. You went to this halfway house that was in the worst part of town in St. Louis. It's where all the bad stuff happens. It's on Coke Brilliant Boulevard that's right next to Martin Luther King Boulevard. And there's really shots of gangs and all kinds of bad stuff. So that's a place you walk into, and to me, it was worse than prison. It was just incredibly dirty. You had 100 to 150 guys that were there from maximum to minimum, and they wanted you there, to help you transition. But for us guys that were not needing that, it just felt like it was just another thing to keep you one step away from your freedom. But after those 7 or 8 weeks I was there, I was finally able to get back into my life. I had 6 months of home confinement. You could go to your work and come back. So you have a little bit of an adjustment. I think, Sandy, for me, there's nothing better than being free. There's nothing better than family. And I feel lucky that I had that. The family to come out to. I know a lot of guys weren't that lucky, and I think it makes it that much harder. They say that 2/3 go back in 3 years and 3/4 go back in 5 years, and I think they say, well, these guys need to get their act together. I think there's some of that. I also think that our society doesn't have it set up for guys to transition back into being productive in the real world, because being an ex-felon, if you're wanting to get a job, you have to check the box that you're an ex-felon. If you want to live somewhere, you have to check the box that you're an ex-felon. If you want to get credit or a car, you have to check the box that you're ex-felon. So those three things that are so important to getting back into life
Exactly.
and society is taken from you. That needs to be tweaked somehow, and I'm not sure how and when that can happen, but those will help the numbers, because these guys, I'm talking about the non-violent guys. The guys that are really will hurt people and are bad people. It's not the category I'm talking about. I'm talking
Exactly.
about people who just are trying to get back into life.
Right.
One thing I can tell you though, Sandy, it moves really fast. I mean, getting the clock stops when you're in prison, and for however long you're in, everything goes on outside that world. And I noticed that when getting set up in prison, I also needed to get set back up in life. There were things that Julie was doing now that she didn't do before I went in. Like, she paid the bills, and I always paid the bills, but she'd been doing it for 3 years. So I had to kind of look to see, okay, the girls had been moved, into college, and those moves had happened. Those were all dad things that I had done. So I really was trying to figure out, I wanted to be the same dad, the same husband, the same friend as I always was, and I didn't want people to be looking at me as like I had changed. And so all those things are kind of going on in your mind, which is kind of a strange phenomenon, because you're super excited to be free, but you're also very pensive about the fact that you don't want people to think that you've turned into some different type of person. So you're really taking it all in and looking at a lot of things and observing, so that you figure out how you fit in. And it took me a while. I'd say it took me at least a good year to feel like I didn't have so much of PTSD of, oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock, I need to line up for count, or it's 10 o'clock, lights out, got to line up for count. One of the funny things that happened, Sandy, was I came home from being at the halfway house, and I had these shower shoes that I had for the last, 3.5 years. And I just, because I was, no other reason, it was just a routine, I put the shower shoes on and got in the shower. And Julie said, what are you doing? I said, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. I said, just such a habit.
Yeah.
I don't even realize I've done it.
Oh my
So
gosh.
just things like that, Sandy, that your mind, you do adjust back, but you don't adjust back immediately, because you're adapting to the world you want to live in, and you have to find out, where is everybody? It's 3 years in advance. I noticed my kids would be watching TV and they'd be looking at their phones. I thought, well, that's strange. They weren't doing that before. But just those type of things would just, you just were picking up on things that nobody else noticed, because they'd been in society for the last 3 years.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, let's talk about your book, because you wrote a book. And when is it scheduled to be released, or has it come out?
It's supposed to be out in January. So
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, Sandy. It's one of those things that I thought about when I was in prison, and one of the things that I had told myself was, there's anything that I can do to use my experience of all the different things, because I feel like I've gone to prison, but I feel like I've lived a really good life and been a little unlucky. But my thought was, if I could write a book about my experiences and talk about how I felt, so you can really just walk beside me as I was going through what I was going through. Hopefully it can be of benefit to other people who maybe could get stuck or need that nudge to feel like, I can get through this. This is all I need to do is take action, just one step. And that's the reason why I wrote the book. It wasn't a settling the scores or who was right and who was wrong. It was really just follow and walk beside me as I went through this life of mine, because, I had some really great things that happened in my life. I had some extreme highs and extreme lows, and, figuring out how to make all that work and still feel like you can take a step is what I believe. And that's why I call it nightmare success. I feel like success, a lot of people say those two words don't go together, but I think they're always together. I think whatever you do, you always have to walk through your fears, your nightmares to get to where you want to be. Whether you have to climb over it, under it, go around it. All those people who get to where they, and success means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think it's happiness. You find happiness. You finally feel fulfilled. I'm doing this podcast right now that is Nightmare Success In and Out, and I'm talking to people who are, I was with at Leavenworth, and we're talking about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. And I'm really enjoying it from the standpoint that it's giving me the opportunity to give these guys a platform to share their stories and how they got through tough times and how some of them are thriving in an environment where they could have made a choice not to. So, and some of them aren't. That's the other part. There's some people that aren't thriving, but that's reality. But it's filling me up from the standpoint that I'm using my experiences to hopefully be able to, if you can just grab a nugget of something to put into your life to make it just a step easier, then I feel good about that.
Well, I tell you, so much of what you've said today is hopefully people will apply that to their lives, because you're just one example of somebody that went through something extremely difficult that nobody could ever imagine, right? Most of us. And you made it through. And here you are. You maintained your marriage. You have a great relationship with your 3 daughters. And, it's amazing. And now you have a book coming out. It's incredible.
and I'm getting to talk to you, Sandee.
There you go.
Yeah, and I knew I wanted to talk to you, Sandee. You made a great speech when we were on that call a few weeks ago, and I thought, that Sandee has it going on. That's the Nightmare Success girl.
Well, I've had my own share of nightmares, and I could talk to you for hours, but I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
If you ever feel like you're stuck, gather up whatever it is that you're trying to reach to, whatever's important to you. Take all your grit you have, your determination, that courage that you have deep in your heart and your soul, and take a step, and you'll feel better.
I love it. That's a big nugget right there. Awesome.
Sandee, I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to staying connected, and I want to hear some of those interviews on your podcast as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Wow. That was so incredible hearing his story. And I had heard him tell it before, but I got a lot more this time around. And I just love what he was talking about when he was, and I even mentioned this in the interview, that, every moment is so precious. And that's what he was living through before he had to, turn himself into prison. So his book is called Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, and Finally Breaking Free, a memoir. His website is brentcassidy.com. And please check out his podcast, which is called Nightmare Success In and Out. So I hope you learned a couple of things today that you can apply to your life right now. Thank you so much for joining me. You can check out my book at sandeesgarlata.com. You can also purchase it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And as always, I hope that you and your family stay safe and healthy, and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and happiness. Take care, everyone.